Welcome to Houston Sports Talk with your host, Robert Land.
Thanks for checking into the best Houston sports podcast, part of the National Bleav Network, and joining me for some insight into Texans' new offensive linemen, Cam Robinson and Ed Ingram, is Vikings insider and Bleav colleague, Mike Wobschall, host of the Bleav and Vikings podcast. Good to have you back on, Mike. Seems like the Vikings and Texans, they seem to be doing a lot of shuttling players between the two teams.
Yeah, that has happened the last couple off seasons. You're right. And I think it's working out for everyone too. At least from the Minnesota standpoint, I think you'd say that. And hopefully Danielle Hunter played well, or you thought he played well for you guys. It looked from afar like he had a pretty good season.
Apparently Caserio thought he played pretty well because he got a brand new extension with some big money attached to that one for another year. So hopefully the Texans will have him for a couple of years now. Let me start off with Cam Robinson, who right now we're assuming is the new starting left tackle for the Texans. Fans remember him from his years in Jacksonville after he was drafted in the second round back in 2017. Mike, the Vikings traded for him in October. What can you tell us about how he looked in Minnesota?
I think the final verdict on Cam as a Viking, I would say he was okay. And I actually say that with the needle pointing a little bit more on the positive side than on the negative. I think, he was okay. You could interpret that as negative, but I want that to be interpreted as mostly positive. I give Cam a lot of credit, Robert, because the Vikings traded for Cam on October 24th after their Week 8 loss to the Rams, in which Christian Darrisaw tore his ACL and MCL. So you have the Minnesota Vikings in the midst of what's shaping up to be a pretty good season with Sam Darnold at the end of October, losing one of their three most valuable players in Christian Darrisaw for the rest of the season. So the Vikings trade for Cam Robinson. Cam Robinson started the next week for Minnesota and started the rest of the season. The Vikings won 9 straight games until they lost the regular season finale to Detroit and then a playoff game to the Rams. So I give Cam a lot of credit for stepping in and doing that. Not many players have been asked to do that in the last 20 years. In fact, only a couple. One of whom was also a former Viking, Bryant McKinnie, who was traded from the Ravens to the Dolphins, I think in 12 and 13 maybe, and started the next week. So Cam's he's a solid player, right? Second round pick out of Alabama, played and started in 101 games. He had an ACL, I think, in 18 and a meniscus in 23. But other than that, he's made all the dances. And I think you can win with Cam. I don't think Cam is a dominant player that you can put on an island every snap and never worry about. I think you have to scheme with Cam, but I think he's a solid player. He's not going to embarrass you. I like the Laramie Tunsil trade for you guys, and I think Cam's a good stopgap until you find a long-term solution there. So I think that's a fair assessment, Robert, of Cam. I'm not overly negative on it. I'm not calling him a surefire all-pro for you either. I think he's a solid player.
The choice the Texans made was it feels like a cheaper Laramie Tunsil. And one issue that the Texans had with Laramie Tunsil last year was penalties. Did I read this right? Did he have 13 penalties?
Yeah.
Cam last year? Is that right?
Yeah, he did. He had too many penalties. That ranked 132nd out of 141 rated players. So that's an issue for Cam to clean up. He's better as a pass protector than he is as a run blocker, but I think that's okay at left tackle, and I think that's okay when you have Joe Mixon. But yeah, penalties are an issue for him, and he surrendered some pressures and some sacks, Robert. He did, and he's not Laramie Tunsil, he's not Christian Darrisaw, but he's not an embarrassment. He's a guy that an offensive line coach can get his hands on, and then an offensive coordinator can scheme around, and you can win for sure with Cam Robinson. You don't have to win in spite of him. He can help you win.
Yeah, you talked about his run blocking 59.9 according to Pro Football Focus, so not that great. But his pass block grade last year, 70.4, which above average by their standards, pretty good. It's over 70 every one of the past 4 years, which is very good. Doesn't match, though, with the fact that from what I read, he allowed the most offensive tackle pressures in the NFL. But one Viking follower said, and I want to get your thought on this, that has a little bit to do with Sam Darnold not exactly getting rid of the football quickly.
You're right. I mean, pass protection is a combination endeavor. Any of us who have watched the game, listened to those talk about the game or talk about the game ourselves like you and I do, Robert. We know that, receivers got to get open, quarterback's got to throw the ball, and the line's got to block. So I don't throw all that at the feet of Cam Robinson. And I give Kevin O'Connell and Wes Phillips, the offensive coordinator, Kevin O'Connell, the head coach, a lot of credit for winning 9 straight games with a left tackle that they traded for midseason. And I give Cam Robinson a lot of credit for stepping in and playing the way he played for the Vikings. I think he was having a pretty good season in Jacksonville before they traded him. It's not easy to step in, play for the Jaguars one week and then the Vikings the next at left tackle. I mean, that's not easy, and he did it. So, look, it's free agency, Robert. Like, more times than not in free agency, there's something that's up with the guy you signed that led to him being on the market and being available to you. The Vikings, everyone is saying they are, winning free agency. They are killing free agency. None of the guys the Vikings have signed played a full season last year. They are all hurt. I mean, and that's part of why they're on the market, right? And all of those guys could end up being productive players for the Vikings in 2025, but they were all injured last year. So the Vikings are getting guys that have a few dings and scratches on them on the free agent market. The Texans are getting a guy in Cam Robinson, and we'll talk about Ed Ingram, I'm sure. They're getting guys who've got some flaws in their game. That's the nature of free agency. But you can't only rely on the draft to fill your roster. You have to supplement and enhance it in other ways. And free agency is one of those main ways. And I think Cam Robinson is just fine as a member of the Texans. I do think the Texans need to address left tackle in the long term with a draft pick, because Cam Robinson is going to be running short on time. He's on the back 9 of his career for sure. But in 2025 with CJ Stroud and Joe Mixon, I think you can win with him.
Last thing on Cam, there were reports the Patriots might have been interested in him, but their O-line coach is Doug Marrone, who knows Robinson from his Jags days. And one report said Marrone was not interested because of Robinson's football character. What was the word on Robinson as a locker room guy in Minnesota? Was there any discussion about how that went?
There wasn't discussion about that, Robert. So I guess I can't really offer much insight there. That was never a headline, a talking point. It was never really a story here. It was really more positive about Cam being able to come in the middle of a season at left tackle and start the same week he was acquired. So, look, Doug Marrone has a lot of respect in the league, and if that's his viewpoint, which I don't know if that's a stated viewpoint or if that's a speculated viewpoint, but if that's his viewpoint, that should not be taken lightly because Doug Marrone would know. He coached him. But from my standpoint, analyzing the Vikings all season last year, I give Cam a lot of credit from a football character standpoint doing what he did.
Just a report, but it should be noted. We'll get into Ed Ingram in just a sec, but before we roll on, I'm pumped because March Madness is here, and every game's a shot for you guys out there to make a little extra cash. My bookies bet and get is back to sweeten the deal. Place a cash bet on March Madness, get a surprise reward with it. Hey, free bets, cash back bonus chips. You never know what's coming next. Maybe it's a number 1 seed rolling. Come on, Cougars, let's get this done. Or maybe it's an underdog shocking the world. Smart bettors know the real money is made one game at a time. You can sign up right now. I'll put the link in the description with the promo code MM50. You can boost your bankroll with the deposit bonus designed to help you make the most of your money. Again, that promo code MM50. And if you don't want a bonus, that's okay too. Just make sure you let them know we sent you. Bet on every game, anytime, from anywhere, only with MyBookie. All right, Mike, the Vikings drafted guard Ed Ingram in the second round out of LSU 3 years ago. What can you tell us about Ingram as a player? You got a chance to see him quite a bit.
I would say with Ed Ingram, there is one part of his game that needs to be fixed. And if that one part is fixed, I think the Texans have a player who's got some runway and potential. Ed Ingram is in a different stage of his career, Robert, than is Cam Robinson. Cam Robinson is over 100 games into his career and was drafted by the Jags, I believe, in 17. Ed Ingram was drafted in 22, I believe it was. So, he's got 40-some games, 46 games with 41 starts to his record. I mean, Ed Ingram has a little wear and tear, but not much. He was benched last year because the Vikings couldn't fix this issue. And so in Minnesota, Ed Ingram doesn't have a great reputation in terms of a player. He was benched interior of the offensive line has been a weakness for the Vikings for the last few seasons, and Ed Ingram has been a mainstay there. So there's negative connotation to Ed Ingram's ability here in Minnesota. The issue, Robert, is that he on occasion will get beat very quickly at the line of scrimmage. And the problem there is it ruins the play. There's no recovering from that. At right guard, if you get beat very quickly, very early in the down, if you get beat at right guard, the play is over because the tackles or linebacker who's pressuring is going to penetrate and there's going to be a tackle for loss or a sack. And that happened a lot with Ed Ingram. So his mistakes were huge mistakes when they happened. They weren't minor mistakes that you could get around or that a quarterback could make up for. And then you had Kirk Cousins and Sam Darnold. Kirk Cousins not mobile at all. So when Ed Ingram would get beat, the play was over. Now, CJ Stroud is not, Mr. Mobility, but he's also not Kirk Cousins. He can move around a little bit. And the Texans probably know that this is Ed Ingram's flaw, and they probably have a plan for him. So I'm not going to go through some of the numbers in the PFF grades because they're pretty ugly for Ed. But I think Ed is a big, strong guy who can anchor really well, who, when he doesn't get beat early, will give you a good rep more times than not. So I see why Houston identified him as a guy to bring in and work on. He's a project. Your offensive line coach will have some work cut out for them here, but he's not like a plug and play instant great player for you. You got to work on him and he's got to get better.
Yeah, pretty cheap. They gave him a 6th-round pick, so I assume it's just, if he works out, great. If he doesn't, they can just release him at 6th-round pick, I think, to Caserio, or just trade chips to get these guys that are, maybe projects, maybe they work out. But the thing was, Mike, instead of improving this past year, it looked like he got worse. He gave the most pressures in the league from what I read. Yeah. What's going on? Was there an injury involved, or did he actually get worse this year?
He got worse. He got benched. He was a 2nd-round pick, Robert. He from LSU, he came in with some promise. Guys that size, 6'3", 307, he just turned 26. He out of LSU, the profile is there. He should be good. But again, he has a tendency he'll whiff early in a down, or a guy will with agility and quickness will get past him early in the down and the play's over. Now, a lot of that was with Kirk Cousins who wouldn't move. So, CJ, I think, has got a little more ability. So 1 out of 3 or 4 of those times, maybe CJ can make a play and avoid it. But I hope that there is a tape of the Ed Ingram early down whiffs that they're going to go over with him and say, like, here's the common thread. When this happens to you, let's fix it. Because if that is fixed, he's a more than serviceable player in my view, particularly in the run game, where I think he can be a really physical, dominating run blocker. And when he gets his hands on you, you're pretty much done. But sometimes he misses and then the play's over.
Yeah, I guess they traded away one guy that was an issue in a 1st-round pick that looked like he was going nowhere in Kenyon Green, and they traded back for another guy that has some similar issues, because I believe that the top 4 guys in pressures this past year were Ed Ingram, Kenyon Green, and Lake Tomlinson, 2 that are now Texans and 1 that they got rid of. So it doesn't make a lot of sense for Texans fans, but these are stopgap measures, I feel, and they're going to be doing some stuff in the draft too. Let me ask you, Mike, the Vikings, how did they do this free agency, and where are they right now? Obviously, Sam Darnold no longer a quarterback for the Vikings.
Yep, Sam Darnold signs in Seattle. He was not tagged. He was not re-signed. I don't think there was a huge effort to re-sign him. I think the Vikings were in on J.J. McCarthy ever since they drafted him, and they knew that he'd be their starter at the latest week 1 of 2025. So I think the Rodgers stuff was overblown and overhyped. I don't think the Vikings were a serious contender for Rodgers ever. I don't think they ever seriously consider bringing Darnold back because they're in on J.J. McCarthy, and everything the Vikings have done since they've drafted J.J. McCarthy, they've operated like a team that has a quarterback on a rookie contract like the Houston Texans. And when that is your case, that's a financially advantageous position to be in because you can spend elsewhere, and the Vikings have done that with Grenard and Cashman and Van Ginkel. And then this offseason with Will Fries and Ryan Kelly and Jonathan Allen. So it's been an active and an exciting offseason or free agency for the Vikings because of all the players they've signed. They've transformed their offensive and defensive lines, Robert. They are a more physical group on both sides of the ball because of who they've signed. Javon Hargrave and Jonathan Allen to beef up the interior, and Will Fries and Ryan Kelly from the Colts to beef up the interior of the offensive line. So transformative free agency period for the Vikings in the trenches. They bring back Aaron Jones. They trade for Jordan Mason to give them two backs who can bring some physicality in the running game, especially Jordan Mason. And so they added Isaiah Rodgers to their secondary. They re-signed Byron Murphy. So it's been pretty active and pretty impressive this offseason for the Vikings. It has a lot of fans pretty optimistic.
Yeah, I was about to say, I assume the fans are optimistic right now with the direction the Vikings are going. And one of the things that, we're not going to get to see you guys this year, the Texans and the Vikings, and the way things went last year. I'm sure Texans fans might be pretty excited that they're not going to see the Vikings because that was one of the uglier games of the year for the Texans. And for our listeners, our viewers, give me your takes. What do you guys think about these couple of deals and what the Texans have done to bring in the two Vikings offensive linemen? And let me know what you think in the comments. And don't forget to support us by subscribing on YouTube, giving this show a thumbs up, and you can listen on the go with your favorite podcast app. Give me a little bit about what's going on with what you've got, Mike, and where people can find you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's Bleav in Vikings. So your viewers and listeners are familiar with the Bleav network. I do the Vikings show, as you mentioned at the top. A lot of fun. 2 to 3 times a week during the season. It's former Vikings offensive lineman Bryant McKinney who joins me. Throughout the year, I have former Vikings safety Anthony Harris, who also played for the Eagles. So we had a lot of fun sort of talking playoffs while the Eagles were making their Super Bowl run. So I love doing the shows on Bleav. Going to continue to do that throughout the offseason and into next season. So that's the main place to find me. But I'm also on all the other places like you are, Twitter. I have a Substack so people can go and find my work on Substack as well. And I like to do a TikTok video every now and then. So it's a lot of fun. This is a fun time of year for in the NFL calendar for sure. A lot of content, a lot of opinions, and I love interacting with fans. I love it when fans sort of dictate the content, react to the content, and exchange ideas. So it's a lot of fun joining you on your show as well. Definitely appreciate you having me back. So, and there's more to come, I think, in the free agency cycle. There's second and third tier players, Robert, but there's still going to be players who are signed. We're going to have NFL owners meetings this week. We're going to have rules changes to discuss. The draft, of course, is coming up. So a lot of fun stuff still ahead here in the offseason.
He's at Wobby, W-O-B-B-Y. If you're listening on audio, if you've got the video, you can see it up on your screen. But thanks for doing this, and thanks for giving us a little time last second with all this stuff going on so quickly.
Always happy to do it. If there's ever another former Viking who finds his way to Houston, look me up. I'd love to join you. I always have fun.
You're listening to Houston Sports Talk.
Hey, don't forget to support us by subscribing and commenting on YouTube. You can always listen to us on Spotify, Apple, or your favorite podcast app. Tell your friends about us and share our show links on social media. Spread the word, everybody. Thanks for listening.